This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
I'm Afraid Chanukah. Thank you for coming. We welcome all the Torah Anytime viewers. And tonight's the second night of Chanukah. And we're all familiar with the fact that the Chazal tell us that the miracle of Chanukah is they came into the Heichal and they could not find pure oil. All the oil had been contaminated. It was all tameh. It was all defiled. And of course, to do the avodah, you need to have tahar oil. They looked, they searched, they couldn't find any oil that had not been contaminated until miraculously they were able to come up with one flask of oil. Unfortunately, though, that flask of oil was only enough to last for one night, and they used it, and it kept burning and burning and burning and burning, and it lasted for 8 nights, and that's how we have a Yom Tov of Chanukah for 8 nights. And there's a very big problem over here, and that is we know that the way God operates the world is that He doesn't like to change the laws of nature. When Hashem created the world, He set the laws of nature into place, and God does not like to change them unless He has a good reason. God likes the laws of nature to work their course, to work the way they're supposed to work. The sun rises in the east in the morning, it sets in the west in the evening. This amount of oil lasts for 1 day, that amount of oil lasts for 2 days, that amount of oil lasts for 3 days. And the question we have to ask is, why was it necessary for God to make this miracle that this little flask of oil that should have only lasted for 1 day, lasted for 8 days? Why did God do it? So you say, what do you mean, why did God do it? He needed to do it. We came to the Beis HaMikdash, we needed to do the avodah. One of the big services in the temple was that every day we lit the menorah, and we didn't have oil to light the menorah. Ask the Pnei Yoshua, that's not true, we didn't have oil to light the menorah. There was tons and tons of oil all over the Heichal. So you ask, what do you mean? All the oil was tameh? Says the Pnei Yeshua, don't you know the halacha? The halacha is that if the majority of Klal Yisrael are tameh, if most Jews are defiled, you're allowed to do the avodah in a state of defilement, betuma. It's called tuma hotra b'tzibur. So if tuma is hotra b'tzibur, then why did God have to make a miracle that a flask of pure oil lasted for 8 days? We could have used tameh oil, impure oil. Why did Hashem have to make the miracle? God doesn't change nature for no reason at all. What He should have done was, we would have taken the oil, we would have seen the seal was broken, and we should have used it anyway. It was tameh. But when the majority of Klal Yisrael is tameh, you're allowed to do the avodah b'tumah.
Since they found the first one was tahor, it was pure, so then they cannot switch from pure.
Okay,
to pure.
so why did God have to make the miracle? Why did Hashem have to make that flask last for 8 days? For what purpose? What was the purpose? It was for no reason. Halachically, it did not add anything.
Yeah, but they didn't know it's going to last. So they started that because they were looking and they found one.
Oh, you're right. I'm not asking why they found it, so they used tar oil. Fine.
Yeah.
But why did God make that pure oil last for 2 days? He didn't have to do it.
Okay,
and if He didn't have to do it, God doesn't change the laws of nature just for the fun of it.
So for that we have 500 reasons, right?
We have 500 reasons for why Chanukah is 8 days and not 7 days. But there's another. This is another major question, and that is, since Tumah, so we're not asking on us, we're asking on God. Why did God have to change the laws? God doesn't change the laws of nature for no reason. Business wasn't doing so well today. I need some extra cash. The ceiling opens up. All of a sudden, pots of gold come down. Does it happen? Doesn't happen to me. Why? Because God doesn't just change the laws of nature for no reason. So why did God make a miracle that this pure flask of oil should last for 8 days? We could have used tameh oil. So you'll say, okay, you're right, we could have used tameh oil. But isn't it better to use pure oil? No, it's not. It's not any better whatsoever. The law is tumas hutra b'tzibur. Hutra b'tzibur means if the majority of the congregation is tameh, using tameh products is just as good and in no way any worse than using pure products. So why did God make the miracle? And we'll add to the question, says the Pnei Yeshua. We know one of the services in the temple was menachos. What are menachos? Meal offerings, flour offerings. Now when you make a meal offering, a mincha, what do you pour into the mincha? Oil. Let me ask you, Rabbi Isai. When the Chashmonaim came back into the Beis HaMikdash and they brought carbon menachos, which oil did they use for the carbon mincha? The Tamei oil, because Tama is Hotra B'tzibur. When the majority of the congregation is Tamei, you're allowed to use Tamei products. So, if they use Tamei oil for the mincha, why couldn't they use Tamei oil for the menorah? If God felt it's adequate to use Tamei oil for the mincha, why was it not adequate for the menorah? Another question that the Noda B'Yehuda raises, if you look at number 6, and this is along the same lines, and that is, where did they get flour from to bring a carbon mincha? Well, you think the Yevanim said, we're going to go into the temple, and we're going to defile every flask of oil that we see? Well, you think they had something against oil? They said, we're going to defile everything. So where do you think they got flour for the carbon mincha? They used tamei flour that they found in the Beis HaMikdash. When they brought the libations, the nesachim, right? They poured wine on the mizbeach. Where'd they get wine from? Tamei wine. Right? The Yevanim didn't discriminate. They defiled the oil, they defiled the flour, they defiled the wine. So the same way the Jews used tamei wine, and tamei flour, and tamei oil, why did God say, you know what, I'm really in the mood of changing the laws of nature so that the menorah that only is supposed to last 1 day should last for 8 days?
Going along with what you said. Going along with what you said, and it was absolutely logically perfect that the oil, the pure oil that was stored, was supposed to become miraculous and supposed to last for 8 days, because everything else was defiled. So since everything else was defiled, so this was the only one. So this was a symbol of the purity that remained from back then, and that's why it lasted that long.
Okay, but why did Hashem make that last so long? Why? It wasn't necessary.
8 days it takes 8 days to make a pure. It takes 8 days. No, because they knew, oil, right?
It would take that long. Okay, according to some, it takes 8 days to process new oil. But wine, how about wine? How long does it take to? You can make wine in 2 seconds.
No,
wine even longer.
It takes longer, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, because oil doesn't go inside your body. You don't drink it. You don't eat it.
Okay.
And once you don't bring it in your body, it doesn't really destroy you spiritually. It means that only avodah, it's only material.
So if anything, we shouldn't have needed pure oil. If anything, we should have needed pure wine and pure flour, but not pure oil.
The intention was there. To begin with, there was a good intention. But because of the destruction, what they're going to do? Anyway, they knew they're going to chase them, they're going to find, they're going to kill them. So as a start, they looked for that. It was a miracle to find the Kad Hashemen over there by itself. That was already a miracle.
The question is, why is Hashem making this miracle? For what purpose is it? We don't need it.
You need to know when a miracle happened to you, it's God give you Ashgacha Pratit.
The question, God hadn't done
they found it. What do you think they found?
Hashem only makes miracles again for a specific purpose. For a specific purpose. We got to get out of Mitzrayim. The sea is in the way, so God splits the sea. God doesn't just make miracles like that. This miracle was halachically not required. Right? We could have very well have used tamei oil, the same way we use tamei flour, the same way we use tamei wine. If anything, imagine this. Why don't, instead of having us find pure oil, and that oil lasts for 8 days, what we could have done? We could have used tamei oil. Every day fill it up with more tamei oil. And what about the wine? Oh, why didn't God make a miracle with the wine? We didn't have enough wine. We didn't have pure wine. So what does Hashem do? He should make a bottle of wine that could only last 1 day, last for 8 days, and then we'll have Purim for 8 days, right? We'll drink wine for 8 days. Yeah. What's with oil? Yeah, sorry.
What I was going to say is, according to some of the things I've read, it's not a question of how long it takes to make the oil. They would have had to travel 3.5 days to get it. Because unfortunately, they didn't have home deliveries back then. And you have 3.5 days to bring it back, plus a day for Shabbos.
Okay, good. But again, they didn't have to get pure oil because they could have used impure oil. Right? So that's what we're going to try to understand. Another thing I want to come back to the very beginning. And that is, God willing, this Shabbos, we're going to learn a special Haftarah, not the regular Haftarah of Pashas Miketz. We learn the Haftarah of Shabbos Chanukah, which is Rani v'simchi bas Tzion ki hineniva v'shalchanti b'soichech no'am Hashem. It's the Haftarah from Sefer Zechariah. Or in English, Zachariah, right? If you meet somebody on the street and they're gonna try to show you verses from Zechariah. Okay? By the way, he was white. The original Zechariah was okay. Anyway,
it's anything related to the date, like Kaf Hey and Kaf Vav, because they won the war.
Okay.
And I heard that Kaf Hey, it's also in Gematria, it's Shem Hashem. Kaf Hey, it's only 25, but in certain levels, it's also Shem Hashem. So.
Okay, good. Right, these are all true, but why this miracle? What was the point? What was the point? What was the point? Now on Shabbos Chanukah we learn the Haftarah Rani v'Simchi b'Asiyon ki hineni va v'Shachanti b'Seichen Om Hashem, and it speaks about a vision of a menorah. In Sefer Zechariah, it talks about Yehoshua the Kohen Gadol. Now, what if there are two Shabbos Chanukahs? Very often there are two Shabbos Chanukahs. What do we learn as the Haftarah of the second Shabbos Chanukah? We learn from Sefer Malachim about the menorah of Shlomo HaMelech. And you don't have to know too much, but who came first? Zechariah or Solomon? Who came first, Zechariah or Shlomo HaMelech? Shlomo. Shlomo's Malachim comes before Zechariah. And if so, why is it that if we only have one Shabbos Chanukah, we learn from Zechariah, about the menorah and Zechariah's vision, and we leave out from Shlomo? Shlomo comes before Zechariah. And if there are two Shabbos Chanukahs, why do we first learn about the menorah and Zechariah's vision, and then the menorah of Shlomo? We know normally we try to do things in order, and Malachim comes before Zechariah. On the first Shabbos Chanukah we should learn the menorah in Sefer Malachim, and the second Shabbos Chanukah we should learn about the menorah in Sefer Zechariah. And this is a question raised by the Rishonim. The Beis Yosef suggests that since the prophecy of Zechariah is a prophecy about La'aseh Lavo, about the days of Mashiach, that idea takes precedence, and therefore we learn about the menorah in Zechariah even before the menorah of Shlomo HaMelech. The Kolbo, another one of the Rishonim, say that the prophecy of Zechariah took place during the second Beis HaMikdash, and Chanukah took place during the second Beis HaMikdash. And therefore it's a nevuah more close in time to the miracle of Chanukah. But we're going to try to explore a different reason, perhaps, why Shabbos Chanukah, the laning of the Haftarah, is from Sefer Zechariah, Rani v'Simchi b'Asiyon. Because really, honestly, if you look at that Haftarah, why do we lane it on Chanukah b'chlal? Because it says the word menorah? Oh, it says the word menorah. Okay, so we're going to lane it on Chanukah. The mention of menorah over there has nothing to do with Chanukah. The whole Haftarah has nothing to do with Chanukah because it says the word menorah. And if it would say, it's not talking about Chanukah. The menorah was something lit in the Beis HaMikdash. We don't lean Parshas Truma on Chanukah just because it talks about the menorah. So why exactly do we lane this Haftarah on Chanukah? If you look in your Chumashim, if somebody could bring some Chumashim, anybody remember, where in the Torah does it talk about the Yomim Tovim? What's the Parsha in the Torah about the Yomim Tovim? Emor, very good. Parshas Emor. In Parshas Emor, first it talks about Pesach, talks about Shavuos, it talks about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. Does it explicitly talk about Purim? No, obviously not, because Purim is only Midrabanan, right? And yet, the Sefer Rokeach points out, if you want to know, take a look in Parshas Emor. We're on page 690. Page 690. Look in Parshas Emor, right after the Torah talks about the various Yomim Tovim, Perek Chav Daled, Pasuk Aleph, Vayedaber Hashem Moshe Lemar, God spoke to Moshe saying, Tzaves b'nei Yisrael, command the b'nei Yisrael, v'yikchu elecha shemen zayis zach. You want to please open the window? Yeah. I want to open some windows. It says, v'yikchu elecha shemen zayis zach. You should take for yourself pure oil, right? Take for yourself pure oil. Says the Rokeach, it talks about all the Yomim Tovim. It talks about Rosh Hashanah, it talks about Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. Where's Chanukah? Okay, Chanukah is only Midrabanan. Obviously the Torah is not going to talk about Chanukah. Nevertheless, right after all the Yomim Tovim, what does it say? Tzavis b'nei Yisrael v'yikhu elecha shemen zayisach. It talks about taking the pure oil for the menorah. That's a remez to Chanukah right after the Parsha of the Moadim. In other words, first it talks about the Yom Tovim that are biblical, that are Midoraisa, and then it hints to Chanukah. Okay? Says the Rokeach, Sefer Rokeach is one of the Rishonim, Rabbi Lezer Migarmaiza. He says, look, in Pasuk Beis it says, Tzavis b'nei Yisrael v'yikhu elecha shemen zayisach kasis lamar lahalos ner tamid. Ner, how many candles? Ner, one candle. And then if you look in Pasuk Daled, al ha-menorah Torah yaraches ha-neiros, candles. This is a remes to Chanukah. The first night, ner. Future nights, neirot. Says the Rokeach like this. If the last Yom Tov discussed in the Torah was Sukkot, and the next Yom Tov the Torah alludes to is Chanukah, you know why Chanukah is 8 days? Because just like Sukkot is 8 days, and the next Yom Tov the Torah is Merames, is Chanukah, Chanukah is also 8 days. Says the Rokeach more. Just like Sukkot is the only Yom Tov that you say Hallel Shalem, a whole Hallel, so to Chanukah you say Hallel Shalom, you say a whole Hallel. Because Chanukah is alluded to right after Sukkot. Oh, come on. Well, what does Chanukah have to do with Sukkot? Well, because there's like a hint in the Torah to Chanukah right after Sukkot, so therefore they both have the same amount of days and the same halachas regarding saying Hallel. What connection is there between Chanukah and Sukkot? And we'll add to that, Rabbi say, on the first night of Chanukah we lit how many candles? One. Tonight we lit? Two. When Mashiach comes, if Mashiach would have come tonight, how many candles would we light tonight? All of it. Yesterday we would have lit 8. Tomorrow and tonight we would have lit 7. Why? Because when Mashiach comes, we'll pass it like Beis Shammai, and Beis Shammai says you go down. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Says the Gemara, Beis Hillel says you go up. Why? Malin b'kodesh ve'in maridin. You always go up in Kedusha. Beis Shammai says you go down. Why? Says Beis Shammai, because when you bring karbanos on Sukkot, you bring 14 bowls, then 13, then 12, then 11, then 10. So just like on Sukkot you go down, so too on Chanukah you go down. Yeah, well, as they say in French, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China, right? Or ma shmita etzel arsina. What does that got to do with anything? Oh, because the karbanos on Sukkot go down, so therefore Chanukah go down. Yeah, and also when I go to my grandmother's house and I go down the steps, I go down the steps. So therefore Chanukah I should go down. I mean, what does that got to do with anything? Right? Well, since when do we invoke the bowls of Sukkot to determine how you light Chanukah menorah? I mean, what does one thing got to do with the other? Plus, if you look in the book of the Chashmonaim, which is not part of the Tanakh, was not allowed to be put in Tanakh for certain and very important reasons. Nevertheless, it's a historical account of Chanukah. And if you look in the Sefer HaChashmonaim, it says that when the Chashmonaim finally rededicated the Beis HaMikdash and the Mizbeach, by the way, I'll tell you something very interesting. Right? There's a very big mitzvah on Chanukah, right? To have jelly donuts, right? It's a very important mitzvah. It's a minhag, right? It's a custom. So Shlomo Zalman Auerbach writes, where does this custom come from? Because he says, you want to make an alam michya on Chanukah. Why do you want to make an alam michya on Chanukah? Because what did the Yevanim do? They defiled the Mizbeach. They were meshakets the Mizbeach. They made it into idol worship. And therefore, we want to say a tefillah that asks Hashem for the restoration of the Mizbeach. Now in Birchas Hamazon, in benching, you don't say anything about the Mizbeach. In Alam Michya, we ask God to restore the Mizbeach. V'yal Mizbechacha v'yal Eichalecha. So he says that's why we eat jelly donuts. This way we can make an Alam Michya, and we can daven for the restoration of the Mizbeach. Okay. So you can have big kavanas when you have the jelly donuts. You want Hashem to restore them. Anyway.
What about
latkes? Oy. I don't know if we could reveal all the such secrets in one night. What?
Much information.
No. Okay. So Rabbi say, if you look in the book of the Chashmonaim, it says something very interesting. That they came out of the caves and they said like this. They said, Baruch Hashem, we're able to dedicate the Beis HaMikdash again. You know what we need to do? We need to make a Yom Tif like the Yom Tif of Sukkot. That's what they said. If you look at number 9, it says, V'yachaygu ata shmoina yamim eileh kimei chag ha-Sukkos. We're going to celebrate now 8 days like the Yom Tov of Sukkos. I mean, why don't they come out of their caves and say, let's make Shavuos, Pesach, 7 days. Well, what's Sukkos? Let's have the Sukkos. Look what it says. V'yikchu arvei nachal. Let's take our ravos. Anfei eitz avos, hadasim, v'anfei hadar, and esrog, v'kapos tamarim. I mean, what did they get confused what month it was? Why are they saying we're going to come out of the caves and celebrate a Yom Tov like Sukkot? What does Sukkot have to do with anything?
Purity. It's also the purifying the. It says purifying the mizbeach.
Okay, so
it's the same idea with the pure oil. Once you're using pure oil, you like purifying again the whole thing after the destruction.
Okay, good. You're barking up a good tree over here. Yeah.
Sukkot is viewed as a Thanksgiving holiday. That we're saying thanks to Hashem for everything that He did for us. When they came out of the cave, they too would want to say thanks. Thanks for what was done.
Okay, good. Sukkot is a Yom Tov of gratitude. Chanukah is a Yom Tov of gratitude. Well, we're going to see what maybe there's a core, a very important core of Sukkot that's very relevant to Chanukah. What did the Yevanim want to do? What did they want to do?
To destroy.
3 mitzvot. They were out against 3 mitzvot, right? Everybody knows. What were they?
Learning Torah and
Rosh Chodesh, Mila, Shabbos. Chodesh, Mila, Shabbos. And yet, if you look in them, and that's what it says in the Megillas Antiochus. There's also another document called Megillas Antiochus. It was not allowed into the Tanakh. Certain communities, they had a custom to read it on Chanukah. There's a Tosas Rid, I believe, in Masechta Sukkah that talks about it. And if you look in Masechta Megillas Antiochus, look at number 11. Megillas Antiochus, it says, Havena la'aleim. The Yevanim said, let's go up against them. Unevata mehem habris. We're going to nullify the covenant. Hamishuleshes. The 3-parted covenant. Asher karas lahem Eloheim. Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Umila. And yet, if you look in the Medrash, now one mention is made of these Gzeros. Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. If you look in the Medrash says one thing that the Yevanim did. On the pasuk in Bereshis that says, "V'haaretz ha'isa soyu, v'avayu, v'choshech apnei sahaim." These are referring to the 4 galusim, the 4 exiles. Choshech refers to Greece. In what way was Greece darkness? Because they darkened our lives by doing what? Says the Medrash, "Shahaisa oimeres lahem." They would say to Klal Yisrael, "Kisvu al keren ashar," ride on the horn of an ox. She'ein lachem chilek v'elokei Yisrael, that you've lost your connection to God. That's all the Medrash says. The Medrash, you see anything about Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh here? No. Anything about they said you can't keep Shabbos? No. Anything about Bris Milah? No. What did they say? Take out your ox and ride on it, you're not connected to God. Just on a very simple level, you know what that would be? That would be like nowadays, when you go outside and you're driving your Lexus, your BMW, I want you to write on your license plate, right? You and God are, split. X, that's it. You're over. Right? The Shara of those days, that was the way they traveled. And this was the greatest advertisement you could put. It's like putting a sign on your front door. You and God have no connection. But it's very interesting that while in Megillas Antiochus we find that the Jewish people were forced to abolish Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and Milah, in the Medrash there's no reference to that. All it says is we have to ride on the horn of an ox. We're not connected to God. And what we want to try to understand is, why does the Medrash not say anything about Chodesh, Milah, and Shabbos? And what was the deeper meaning of the Yevanim telling us to ride on the horn of an ox, that we are no longer connected to God? Comes the Chida, okay? Nachman, you might know this Chida, but the Chida comes and says like this. Okay, right? This week's Parsha is what? Miketz. Yosef HaTzadik comes to Paro, and he says, Mr. Paro, V'yase Paro, v'yafket v'kidim ala oretz. I want Paro to appoint administrators over the land. V'chimesh es Eretz Mitzrayim. Prepare Eretz Mitzrayim. Rashi says, Mezayin. supply them, prepare the land. Says the Chida, on a deeper level, Yosef was not just saying to prepare Mitzrayim by storing up food, but the word v'chimesh, chodesh, Mila, Shabbos. Yosef wanted to institute in Mitzrayim chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. V'chimesh esaretz Mitzrayim. Why these three mitzvos? Says the Chida, these three mitzvos have a common denominator. You know what they are? These are the three mitzvos that cause God's Shechina to rest among us. Now, what does that mean? What is Shechina? What does it mean? What is a Shechina? There's one God, right? Hashem's everywhere. Hashem is here, Hashem is there, right? Even Uncle Moshe says, Hashem is here, Hashem is there. Hashem is truly everywhere, right? By the way, even though the Vilna Gaon disagrees with that statement of Uncle Moshe, but that's a different discussion. But Uncle Moshe is paskening like the Balatanya. But the Gra and Sefer Yeshayahu disagrees that Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. As the Vilna Gaon says, is Hashem in the Beis HaKisei? So the Vilna Gaon says, Hashem's not everywhere, Hashem's in the garbage can, Chas v'shalom. So how can we say Hashem is there? But this, by the way, this Nakuda, this point, is the main disagreement between Chasidim and Misnagdim.
Yeah, but everything in the world is with the Hashem Spirit, you know. Everything connected together with Hashem Spirit. Without Hashem, nothing is going to be. Everything is going to be the Spirit.
If Hashem isn't in the Beis HaKisei, then someone can go into the Beis HaKisei and do an Avera.
Doesn't mean Hashem doesn't know what's going on over there. But the question is, where is Hashem? No. You're over here. I'm here. Does that mean I can't see you? And I don't know what's doing on the other side of the table? I'm not there. I know what's doing over there. I see, I understand, but I'm not there. Says the Vilna Gaon, Hashem is not everywhere. Kavaydai, but not Malay Hashem. And this is one of the reasons why the Vilna Gaon disagreed vehemently with the early Hasidim. But this is a separate discussion, and Rav Shimon Schwab learns that this machlokes is not just a machlokes between the Hasidim and the Masnag, it's actually a machlokes between the Srafim and the Chayos HaKodesh. Some say, Kadosh Kadosh Malay Kol Haaretz Kavaydai, and some say, Baruch Kavod Hashem Mima Kaimai. Hashem is only Mima Kaimai. Okay. But this is a separate discussion. Anyway, that there's a concept of Shechina. Shechina means, on a very superficial level, God is everywhere. But His divine providence, His hashgacha pratis, His special love, sometimes is concentrated in certain areas. For example, if you would stay at home this morning, you couldn't learn the Torah. Why not? I want to learn. The answer is, to learn the Torah, you need 10 Jews. Why? Because 10 Jews brings down the Shechina. And if you have 9 Jews, if you have the Gadol Hadar, he can't learn. If you have the 9 Gedolei Hadar, they can't learn. If you have 9 Gedolei Hadar and a murderer, adulterer, mamzer, Baal Lashon Hara, he brings down the Shechina, something that these 9 Gedolei Hadar couldn't do. So there's a concept, there's Shechina, God's divine presence. Says the Chida, there are 3 mitzvahs specifically that bring down the Shechina. And that is Rosh Chodesh, like we say every Rosh Chodesh. What do we say? Amar Abaye, El Molei Lo Yizachu Yisrael Ela Lehakbil Pnei Avim Shabashamayim Pamachas B'Chodesh Dayim. When we go out to greet the new moon, we are greeting the Shechina. Shabbos, B'Shamunei Zazal L'Doiraisam. L'Doiraisam could also be read L'Dirasam. When you keep Shabbos, you bring God into your home. Brings the Shechina. Mila brings the Shechina. That's the common denominator of these 3 mitzvahs. Yosef HaTzadik knew that, what did Hashem tell Yaakov? Hashem told Yaakov, you're going to go down to Mitzrayim, I will come with you, and I will come out with you. How could we ensure that God's going to come down to Mitzrayim with us and take us out? These are the 3 mitzvahs we got to do. Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. This was the institution of Yosef HaTzadik, B'chimesh Esaretz Mitzrayim. Come the Yevanim, and the Yevanim also say that if we want to defeat the Jews, we got to disconnect them from their God. And the way they're connected to their God is by them bringing God down into their lives. How? Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. So what do the Yevanim do? They are Mavatel Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. In effect, by doing that, what did they make us feel? Ein lanu chelek b'elokei Yisrael. We were not connected to God. Why did they make us ride on the horn of an ox? Because who's the ox? Yosef HaTzadik is called Bechor Shoro Hadalo. Yosef is alluded to by the ox. So what the Yevanim were saying is, you take your ox, you take Yosef HaTzadik, and toss it. These were not two different things. Ride on the horn of an ox that you have no share in God. And then, be mevatel chodesh milan Shabbos. It was one thing. Be mevatel chodesh milan Shabbos. By doing so, what are you doing? You're in effect taking what Yosef HaTzadik did, of Echimesh Eretz Mitzrayim in this week's Parsha, and you're removing it. Okay? So that was the intention of the Yevanim. The intention of the Yevanim was, Yosef wanted to institute Chodesh Milan Shabbos. The Yevanim wanted us to feel that we're no longer connected to God. Ein lanu chelek b'elokei Yisrael. How did they do that? B'mevatel Chodesh Milan Shabbos.
How do you know these stuff which actually bring the Shechina to them?
How did the Yevanim know the Chidah?
No, they know the Shechina is the three things.
How do we know these three things?
How they know.
How they know.
Oh.
They make us.
Three things bring the Shechina.
No, I mean, they knew. They definitely knew. They definitely.
They actually, they said these three things they're going to do.
The Jewish spies.
I don't know. Either you could say that of all the nations in the world, I'll just say something very briefly, very, very interesting. When Daniel had a vision of the four Galosim, he saw, if anybody remembers, we discussed this many months ago, he saw the Babylonians as which animal? A lion. He saw the Persians were a bear, right? The hairy bear. And Greeks were, anyone remember?
Ox.
Leopard. Says the Maral, something amazing. The Maral says, why a leopard? If you look through the Gemara, of all the umos who tried to make gezeros against us, none try to be mevatel us from the Torah. None try to make us forget the Torah, except for the Greeks. Why? Why weren't the Persians or the Babylonians interested in making us forget the Torah? They had no connection to the Torah. The Torah was something beyond them. They didn't even understand what the Torah was. And if you don't understand what it is, what do you care if the people are learning it or not? The Greeks were the only nation that had a connection to wisdom. Like we find, the Greeks commissioned 70 sages to translate the Torah into Greek. The only language you're allowed to write a Sefer Torah in other than Hebrew is Greek. Yafta Elokim Liyefes.
Because of Yefet.
Yefes, right? So the Greek, of all the nations of the world, they had the greatest wisdom. Now, if someone, imagine like you're walking down the street and you see the king, you see someone marries the princess. You're jealous of the guy? No. Nobody, you had no connection there. Why would you ever be able to marry the princess that you should be jealous of someone who marries the princess? No connection to her. But someone who had the opportunity to marry the princess, and he lost out on it to some other guy, he's going to be jealous. You're only jealous of something that you think you really could have got. So the Greeks, because of their natural disposition to wisdom, that's why they wanted us to make us forget the Torah. Because the Torah was something they could relate to, and they understood it was greater than their wisdom, and they were jealous of it. And therefore, why are they compared to the leopard? Because in order to acquire wisdom, which character trait do you need to have? Chutzpah. Ein habaishan lamed. Someone who's shameful can't learn. Why? Because sometimes you hear a shiur, you hear a dvar Torah, you hear something, you don't really understand it. So either you could say, oh yeah, whatever, basically I get it. Well, I'm going to go ask the Rebbe, explain to me what this word means. He's going to think I'm like, I'm not smart or something. So okay, I'll leave it be. But someone who is chutzpah, he said, what are you talking about? Right? Or the rabbi says something, it doesn't make any sense. The rabbi doesn't, right? Maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about. So you go, Rabbi, what in the world did you just say? It doesn't make any sense. If you want wisdom, you need to have some chutzpah. Even though the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says, which animal is the most chutzpahdik? The leopard. Now, I don't know if this is nowadays scientifically proven, but at least in the times of the Mishnah, a namer, a leopard, so I don't know if namer is really a leopard, but at least in Mishnaic Hebrew, the namer, a leopard, is the product of a lion and a pig. Look in the Bar Tanura on the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. It's the most chutzpahdik animal. It's a mamzer, and not only a mamzer, it's a mamzer from a pig. So it has real chutzpah. It's a very audacious animal. So Havi Az Kanomer. You want Torah? You need to be bold like a leopard. You got to pursue it. You can't be shameful, even though the Mishnah goes on to say, Az Panim L'Gehenim. Someone who has chutzpah is going straight to you-know-where. So how do you reconcile the two? The answer is, if you're a chutzpah-dika guy, you're going to you-know-where. But there's one tiny, small amount of chutzpah necessary, and you have to use it in a small area, and that is pursuing Torah. That means like this. In every other aspect of life, you have to be shameful, bashful, shy. When it comes to Torah, there's no shyness. You push right ahead. You go to the front. It's not. We're not talking about pushing. I don't mean to push other people away. It's mean not to be shameful. Not to be shameful. That's why, by the way, a midah. What does midah mean? Measurement. There's no such thing as a good midah or a bad midah. It's what needs to be measured out in this situation. Normally, shameful, shyness, bashfulness comes to trying to understand Torah. So, and therefore, that's why Greece is compared to which animal? The leopard. Yeah, okay, that's just an aside. So therefore, what the Jews started to feel, Rabbosai, that in fact, God was not with them anymore. Because they lost Chodesh Mila and Shabbos. And without Chodesh Mila and Shabbos, then what happens? No Shechina. And we started to feel that we have no connection to God. So Hashem says, I got to do something about that. There is one part of the Beis HaMikdash that is eidos, testifies to the world that God's Shechina is amongst us. Says the Gemara in Shabbos. Why did they light the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash? What, God can't see? He needs a flashlight in the Beis HaMikdash? Come on. Why do you have to light the menorah? Does God need the light? Says the Gemara in Shabbos, God doesn't need the light. But there was a special miracle with the menorah. And the miracle was they lit the Ner Ma'aravi, the westernmost candle. Either it was the leftmost candle or the middle candle. It's Machlokas and Gemara and Shabbos. And that candle was the first candle that was lit, and it lasted longer than any of the other candles. It was a miracle, because all the candles had the same amount of oil, and that candle lasted the longest. What did that show, says the Gemara in Shabbos, number 14? Eidus hi lebai olam shehashchina shayra b'Yisrael. The menorah represented that God doesn't rest among the Chinese, the Japanese, the Italians, the Americans. The Shechina only rests on the Jewish people. That's the point of the menorah. The miracle with the menorah is God's interest is only with us. He's only interested in us.
Increase them.
And because, what did the Greeks make us feel? They took away Shabbos, Mila, and Rosh Chodesh, which are the mitzvahs that bring the Shechina, and they thereby took away our connection to the Shechina, and they made us feel, Ein lanu chelek v'elokei Yisrael, that the Shechina is not among us. So God wanted to do a miracle to demonstrate the Shechina is still here. And especially, the Pnei Yeshua writes, that even though we know the Ner Ma'aravi was never extinguished, but already right before the period of Chanukah, it started to flicker and dim and go out at some times, which increased the Jewish people's feeling that, in fact, the Shechina was no longer among us. So because the decrees of the Greeks were to make us feel the Shechina is no longer among us, halachically, did we need tahar oil? No. The same way we used impure flour and impure wine and impure oil for the menachos, halachically we were permitted and even required to use tamei oil for the menorah. But the miracle for the menorah was needed for a different reason. You know what the miracle was needed? To show the Shechina had returned. Because the Greeks, since the menorah is that item in the Beis HaMikdash, that testifies the Shechina is among us. And the Yevanim wanted to abolish that. How? By being Mavatel, V'chimesh, Chodesh Mila and Shabbos. So therefore God wanted to make a miracle to demonstrate that the Shechina returned. So now when you make a Yom Tov to demonstrate that the Shechina returned, if anybody remembers, we celebrate the Yom Tov of Sukkot to commemorate the clouds of glory. And the famous question is, we should sit in the sukkah in Nisan time, in the spring. Why do we sit in the sukkah Sukkot time? So what did the Vilna Gaon say?
Since we celebrate Sukkot for returning of the cloud. So the same way we celebrate Chanukah for returning the flame of the
Shechina, because of Shechina.
Also, Vilna Gaon says the Yom Tif of Sukkot is not commemorating clouds, because the clouds came in Nisan. It's commemorating the fact, I'm going to tell you something, that when we left Mitzrayim, we had clouds. That was the Shechina. Anani HaKavod. The kavod of who? Kavod of the Shechina. And when we sinned with the Egel, says the Vilna Gaon, the clouds went away. And Klal Yisrael started to feel what? The Shechina was not among us. And then Moshe Rabbeinu went up on the first day of Elul to daven, for God to forgive us. And he came down 40 days later on Yom Kippur, and God said the magical words, Salachti Kidvarecha, you're forgiven. And yet the Shechina did not come back, and the Jews were devastated. And Moshe gave them the command to build a Mishkan on the 11th of Tishrei, and they brought donations, Baboker, the 12th and the 13th. The 14th of Tishrei, Vayikaleha Amehavi, they stopped bringing. And the 15th of Tishrei, the Shechina returned. And for the return of their Shechina, how many days of Yom Tif did they make? 8 days. With what kind of Hallel? Hallel Shalom. So therefore, in the times of Chanukah, what are we celebrating? A miracle? Not celebrating a miracle, because we didn't need the miracle. Right? The same way, Sukkot is not a celebration of Anani HaKavod, it's a celebration of the return of the Shechina. So Chanukah is not a celebration of the miracle was pointless and useless. The celebration is the return of the Shechina. You're celebrating return of the Shechina. What kind of Yom Tif do we need to enact? 8 days. What do we need to do? Hallel Shalom, just like on Sukkot. Where is Chanukah are alluded to in the Chumash? Right after the Yom Tif of Sukkot, V'yikleilecha shemen zayisach. You should take for yourself pure oil. Pure oil.
Because this is how you bring the Shechina, or because this is...
Because the Yom Tif of Chanukah is a celebration of the return of the Shechina, which was declared by the fact that a miracle happened with the menorah. The same way the Ner Maravi, the fact that it miraculously always burnt, was a symbol of God's Shechina among Klal Yisrael. So too, this miracle in the menorah, this is very similar to the miracle of the Ner Maravi. It was lighting one candle. It should have only lit for one night, and it lasted for 8 nights. This was, in effect, a demonstration of God showing His Shechina still among us. So the Yom Tov of Chanukah is very much connected to the Yom Tov of Sukkot. And I'll just add, I was thinking right now, that we know the 3 Yomim Tovim, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Pesach is Keneged Avraham Avinu, because why again? Because the Malachim came to Abraham on Pesach Lushi Vasi Ugos. Yitzchak is Keneged Shavuos, because the shofar sound of Har Sinai was from the shofar of Yitzchak. And Yaakov is Keneged Sukkos, because the Torah says V'Yaakov Nasa Sukkosa. Yaakov Avinu passed away on Sukkos. They mourned Yaakov how many days? 30 days until they mourned him 30 days, and they embalmed him 40 days, a total of 70 days. 70 days after the first day of Sukkot is Chanukah. Says the Chassam Sofer, just remembering now, that Yaakov Avinu, so the Yom Tov of Sukkot, which is the Yom Tov of Yaakov, nevertheless Chanukah, Sukkot is the model of Chanukah. In other words, when they enacted Chanukah, they used Sukkot as the model. How do we make a Yom Tov? Sukkot. Why? Because these are both Yomim Tovim that what? Represent the return of the Shechina, connected by the Petira of Yaakov Avinu, and the final 70th day after the Petira of Yaakov Avinu. Yes.
So we celebrate Sukkot for returning the Ananei Kavod. Right? So we celebrate Chanukah for returning the Ner Maravi.
The return of the Shechina. The return of the Shechina. The same way the miracle with the menorah, the Ner Maravi, represented that God's Shechina is among us, similar. This miracle was a very similar miracle to the miracle of the Ner Ma'aravi. It was in the menorah, and it was also a miracle of oil, which really should not have lasted so long, continuing to burn. So that is why,
Just for an idea. So if the oil was the tool of purification and bringing the Shechina, calling the Shechina to come and show us that, we're still here, I'm coming back, what was the tool in the Sukkot? The schach or the
Ananei HaKavod, the clouds of glory that came back to the Jewish people on Sukkot. They left by the Chet HaEgel.
Yeah, but here you put a purified oil.
This was just
the miracle came. But over there, what
did the Jewish people do?
No. What was the parallel to the oil in the Sukkah?
The Jews built the Mishkan, and then the Shechina came down. They built the Mishkan, and then that made the Shechina come down. Now I just want to. So now we could say, I believe I once saw this in a sefer, I think from Rabbi David Cohen, I believe. What did the Yevanim want us to do? They said, write on the horn of an ox that you have no chelek v'lekei Yisrael. We said in the beginning from the Chidah that what they meant was Yosef HaTzadik, who was the Shar, and he instituted Chodesh Mila and Shabbos. They said, go take Yosef, and deeper meaning. They made us write on the horn of the ox. What was the Shar? The Egel. The Egel is called the Shar in Tehillim. The Tavna Shar, Ochal Esav. They said, you think the Shechina is among you? Nah! You guys are just like in the times of the Chet HaEgel. Just like when you built that Shar, the Shechina departed. When you're sinning now, the Shechina has also departed. They said, go take an ox and write, you have no chelek in God. In other words, they were bringing up again. They were drumming up the sin of the Egel. That's why they said, ride on the horn of an ox. So the same way the Yevanim were drumming up the sin of the Egel, when we celebrate the miracle, just like after the sin of the Egel, they instituted Sukkot, so too, during this period of time, we instituted Chanukah as a parallel to Sukkot. Says Beis Shammai, should you go up in the candles or go down in the candles? The same way in the Karbanos of Sukkot. Where you go now? What does Sukkot got to do with anything? It has everything to do with everything. Because this is the Yom Tov that we're trying to celebrate. How do we celebrate the return of the Shechina? Says Beis Shammai, we have to look at Sukkot. If we celebrate return of Shechina by bringing the Parim 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, so on Chanukah also we have to go down, 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 down. And that is the reason why Hashem specifically made a miracle with the menorah. Halachically, was it necessary? No. Did it accomplish anything halachically? No. With the same way we could have used, the same way we used tamei wine and tamei flour and tamei oil for the menachos, we could have used tamei oil for the menorah. But God wanted to show something. The Yevanim say you have no share in God. Hashem says, my Shechina is back amongst you, and that's why they're masaking a Yom Tov similar to Sukkot, 8 days with a Halo Shalem.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.